I thought I would break down our conversation into three different areas, and that is the trends that have been at the forefront for me within FP&A over the years, my thoughts on the 5 critical roles that Ron, you just took us through, and then a very practical approach to building FP&A teams that have worked for me in the past, and I'm hoping it will be helpful for those on the call today. As I reflect back to when I first started in FP&A, and that was over 2 decades ago, the approaches that were taken at the time as we analyzed our company's performance were very simplistic approaches. Although at the time I didn't really think they were simplistic at the time. It was solely backward looking, really only analyzed historical information. And I feel then FP&A was really seen as number crunchers. We dealt with the transactions, explained month end, and put P&Ls together. When it came to strategic planning, FP&A didn't really have a seat at the table as they do today. And we may have racked up the numbers and consolidated numbers, but we weren't actively involved in these discussions on strategy. And as far as performance management, we were the group that really had the information and the data, gathered the opportunities and risks, but really had little, I would say, influence over strategic decisions that would improve performance. So those working in FP&A in the field now, many on this call, know how far we've come and advanced as a function over the last 20 years. So if we take a look at what has changed over this period, there have been a lot of trends over time, but the 3 that really stuck with me are technology, being that strategic business partner, and then risk management or scenario planning. For the first one, it goes without saying that technology has changed rapidly with ERP systems, reporting systems that can do more than ever before. Not only can we do financial close much faster, but we have real-time data on performance throughout the month. Depending on your investments within the technologies, some companies have brought in AI and predictive analytics and dynamic dashboards, as well as storytelling features, which is my last role as well. We did a lot of that. And, you know, all of these features have really improved the way that we could budget. For the company that I work for, our parent company, we are actually moving towards a more agile approach to budgeting because of these advancements. Our company is focused more on reducing the actual number of hours across the entire enterprise that's taken up with planning, because we do recognize that planning is a big time suck away from critical R&D or commercial roles, because budgeting really doesn't do anything to enhance the consumer or the patient experience in our case. The second one is strategic partnering. This one is related to the first trend around technology, because as we become more efficient, we have access to more and better data that is automated. The ability to bring out these valuable nuggets of what the data means has enhanced, I would say, the business value that our function has brought. And now companies are seeking input from FP&A teams. And so now we do have a seat at the table to make strategic decisions alongside the CEO and other various functions. Depending on what type of industry you're in, finance is actually leading some of these discussions, which is great because it requires different skill sets around communicating, collaboration skills, as well as strong EQ or emotional intelligence. The last one is risk management, and many industries have seen over the last few years that with the pandemic, and even now as we recover from the pandemic, there is more uncertainty in the business environment around us. And so FP&A functions are playing a greater emphasis on strategic planning and sensitivity analysis, for example. Within our industry, within life sciences, global supply chain disruptions is the biggest example I can think of as well. Within the pharma industry, it's very important that we understand the manufacturing of important prescription drugs and all the inputs required to do that, and then work with healthcare regulatories to ensure that we have the right possible alternatives in case of shortages. So I've reflected on the 5 critical roles that exist on an FP&A team that Ron took us through. And I'll only call out a few of my observations here. The first one is these roles really highly depend on the size and stage of company that you're in. So I'm currently in a startup biotech. We have a very small FP&A team of only a few people. And when you're in startup, you're really focused on just getting the data right through the systems. And only now are we really building the right reporting to analyze the data. So we are quite nascent on the definitions of these roles on our team. The other thing I'll call out is that each person on this team is not a unique role as you see it here. So I'll give you an example. You may have only a few people on the team, but you do need to cover off the value eventually generated from each of these roles that we heard earlier. So at times I may play the data scientist or the analyst role, but then I have to quickly switch gears and be that storyteller or the influencer when it comes to partnering with my stakeholders, depending on who I'm obviously dealing with within the organization. And then lastly, the skill sets of these roles are quite different from one another and require deliberate effort to build. For example, I've had many analysts on the team in the past who've had to work hard to build that muscle of influence to be able to generate action and really change and improve performance. Data scientists have a very specific skill set, and universities have dedicated programs specifically in this area now, I think more than in the past. Which brings me to my last slide. And so knowing the 5 critical roles that we've covered, and it's good to know that we're getting material on this afterwards, but how do you actually build an FP&A team around those 5 critical roles? So very simply, building an FP&A team, or any team for that matter of fact, requires you to carefully assess where you are today, where you need to be, and then how quickly you need to get there. And I'm sure there are many ways to do this. These are just the steps that I found have worked for me in the past. And as you can tell, there's a pre-assessment phase where you audit the skills of your existing team, assuming it's in place, and then define the skill sets required for each of those different roles. And it's at this phase where you can actually work in those critical roles, those 5 critical roles, when you think about this. And from that point, you'll have to make a decision on whether or not you need to acquire these skills outside of your organization or build these skill sets within, depending on how much time you have to fill in these gaps. So hiring and training are obviously a big part of the key activities at this moment. I've had times in the past where I've had to bring in someone to fill in the role of an analyst because the team lacked the fundamental analytical or functional skills required to pull those insights out of the systems, which ended up leveling out the team from a skills perspective and actually created a nice career ladder as well within the team, which was great. So after this point, once the team is in place, there will be an ongoing period where there's going to be continuous learning and optimization. This is where improving processes and the ways in which you work within the team will evolve, given the tools, obviously, that you have access to. And because we know that business is dynamic and it's always changing, so should be our approaches in the way we move and evolve as an FP&A function.